Hello there. In my most recent video, I talked about what gun a new competitive shooter should pick as their competition gun. There was a lot of controversy, a lot of arguing in the comments, a lot of opinions out there. What I'm going to focus today is on the striker fired option and why I think for a lot of people, that's the gun they should choose. Let's get into it. Shooter, make ready. Are you ready? Stand by. Now, for most competitive shooters, I recommend a Glock. Why? Because that's probably what you have. And in the video, one of the things that people pointed out in the comments that they were totally right about is I used the word modular and I said the wrong word. It happens. I meant they're modifiable. You can modify a Glock. So if you carry a Glock right now, if you have one on your nightstand, if you've got a Glock 17, if you've got a Glock 19 even, if you've got a Glock 34, man, you are dialed in and ready for competition. Just get out there and shoot the thing, right? And as time goes on and as you get more comfortable, you can make some changes to the gun to make it more competitive. Now, you can't have a conversation about striker fired handguns in competition without mentioning the SIG P320. Why? Well, because up until about 2023, it was overwhelmingly the most popular striker fired gun in carry and limited optics by far. I think 20% of the guns used in carry optics in the USPSA Nationals in 2023 were SIG P320s. That is dropping off dramatically because, as you know, there's things out there, and I'm not here to say whether what's happening or whether this is the fault of the gun or the company or the holster. I just straight up, I don't know. But here's what I do know. SIG has the SIG P320 especially, but SIG as a company has damaged their reputation in the way they've approached it.
Did you see that?
But the SIG P320 has lost the confidence of the majority of shooters. That's just the way that it is. And now they've been banned from many competitions. IDPA has completely banned them. USPSA has made it so it's up to the individual range. So the problem is if you're a guy that's got a 320 and you show up at your local range, you can't practice because they've banned it. And if USPSA holds a major match or let's say the Nationals match is held at a range that doesn't allow the 320, anyone who's shooting that gun is going to have to go to a different platform and still have to compete at their highest level. It's just not a platform that you should consider as a new shooter just because of the trajectory that the popularity and the trust of that platform is on right now. That's enough about the 320. Let's talk about the Shadow 2. Why do we say, and why do a lot of people in the comments say, hey, a new shooter maybe shouldn't step up to the Shadow 2? Let's talk about it for a second. The reason is, though double action, again, all my guns have been cleared here, okay? A double action, single action gun used to be a very common, it wasn't all that long ago. It's the SIG 226, 229s, a lot of guns, Berettas. Double action, single action was a really common thing, and most people were very comfortable with that platform. Times have changed. Most people don't have something like this on their nightstand, and they're not carrying anything that operates like this. So this is one more variable that's unfamiliar that you're introducing to a new competitive shooter that might just be that tipping point of overwhelm when they're out on the range and might lead to more issues, more challenges, and make things more difficult for them. That wouldn't be the goal here. Now, if you're comfortable and you have a double action, single action gun, or you're very competent with them, this is a fantastic choice. I've done some research. That's going to be a later video, but about 34-35% of competitive shooters, they're carrying this gun. It's by far the most popular gun in carry and limited optics. It's fantastic. So if you're comfortable and competent with this platform, this is a great place to go. But today, most people don't have that. Most people probably have a Glock. That's what you've got sitting on your nightstand or in your nightstand. It's what you're carrying. Chances are that's what you have. And if that's the case, that's a great place to start. And it's actually the gun that I recommend to most shooters because they're just so simple, but they can be modified to improve. And I maintain, though a lot of people in the comments are right, and experienced shooters will say this all the time, that it's the archer, not the arrow. Okay, I get it. It's true. Nils Jonathan kicked my trash with a production Panic, and I was carrying my PCC JP5. He killed me. The guy's a machine. And in that situation, absolutely, it's the archer, not the arrow. I get it. That's true. Practice, dry fire, rounds going through your gun. That's where you hone your skills. And the number one thing you can do as a competitive shooter. But I maintain that modifications or upgrades to a firearm have a bigger impact and influence a newer shooter more than they do a more experienced shooter. This is my stock Glock 19X. I could hand this gun to Nils and he would crush me with it. He would just do incredible. If I hand this gun to a brand new shooter and have them run a stage, a very simple one, because we'll get about that in a minute, and then hand them, for instance, this gun that has a very nice trigger in it, it's going to completely change and immediately improve their results. Okay, so let's talk about, I've got 4 different Glock triggers here. Let's just talk about them. What I'm showing here is just how modifiable these guns are. Stock trigger. This thing pulls at about 6 pounds. Okay, it's a heavy trigger.
Okay, perfect. Go ahead and pull the trigger once so you get an idea what that trigger is going to feel like. You have to pull pretty hard. It's a Glock.
Okay.
Get that?
Why does that impact a shooter? Because there's 3 things that happen when there's a long, heavy trigger pull like this. Okay, long, heavy trigger pull. Trigger comes back to the wall, sort of a wall, and then it presses long through, and again about 6 pounds. Okay, there's a lot that can happen in that time frame, and what most often happens is most newer shooters have not practiced moving only this finger and nothing else. And when they have to pull that hard on a trigger, the rest of their hand clenches as well, and that gun tends to dip. Okay, so that's a problem. You don't want that to happen. So you don't want that to dip. The other thing that happens is if they put their finger too far in the trigger guard, they're pulling the gun to the right, and if they don't put it in far enough, they're pushing the gun to the left. Very common to have happen on a long trigger like this. The nice thing is, with a Glock, you can upgrade that pretty easily. This is my Johnny Glocks combat trigger. This is my everyday carry. This has reduced this trigger pull down to less than 4 pounds. So it's about 2 pounds lighter than the stock Glock trigger. Feels a lot smoother, a lot crisper. Similar, it feels like a Glock trigger is supposed to feel, but just done right. And Johnny Glocks does an incredible job of that. This is a wonderful trigger. Takes a couple pounds off and immediately reduces how much swinging or dipping this gun does in the hands of an inexperienced or less experienced shooter. Okay. Then I've got a Timney trigger. Again, this is an easy drop-in modification that someone can make to one of their competition firearms. This gun has about a 3 to 3.5 pound trigger pull, and it's more of a rolling break. It's an acquired taste, I think, for sure. Comes back to a wall and then just kind of creeps through and finally breaks. When you're pulling the trigger, though, because it's so light, man, it feels good. This is the gun actually, or the trigger that Terran Tactical puts inside their Combat Master versions of Glock, and then they sprinkle magic fairy dust in it and make this thing about 2 pounds. It's ridiculous. I don't have my Combat Master today, but man, a ridiculous trigger. But again, an easy drop-in trigger. And then the final one I'll show you here, this is by far my favorite. This, for competition, this is the TriggerTech ACE trigger system, okay? And that makes this trigger feel like a 1911. Now, this is their prototype. They've just started releasing the upgrades that they made because the original one they put out, if you're familiar with it, wasn't drop safe. They've made some improvements and some changes that completely fixed that in all of my testing. But on this trigger, this is the one there's a competition one they worked with USPSA to make this one legal. This trigger sits at just over 2 pounds, and it comes to a wall and breaks, and it is crisp with a nice little reset. real short. Oh, it's such a good trigger. This is actually might be my favorite trigger on any gun that I have. I think I prefer it to any of my 2011s. It's such a good trigger. So again, an easy thing that I can do that immediately, if I hand a gun with a better trigger in it to a new competitive shooter, they immediately improve. Just one of those things. Glock has so many aftermarket options. And again, guys, ignore the comp. I know this one has a comp on it. This isn't how you would set it up if you were running it in competition. This makes it limited optics. By having this on here, you'd pull that off. Run it as carry optics and set your Glock up something like this. You can have a flashlight or not a flashlight. The flashlight can help you a little bit with mitigating recoil, but it does have to work. Okay. But you can run it with a flashlight and that'll give you a little bit less recoil on that. And if you want to see some cool things you can do to help mitigate recoil with a flashlight, watch PewView. He's got some cool tips on that. If you have a Canic and you're competent with a Canic, run it. You got a Walther, they make a great trigger. I'm not a big fan of the recoil impulse on a Walther. About 7% of competition shooters out there run a Walther. They're a great gun. They're not dominant. They're not super common, but if you have one, it's totally respectable. You got a Springfield Echelon? Run that. You got a Smith & Wesson competitor, or you got a Smith & Wesson carry? Run that gun. And then the nice thing is you can start with it. You can buy the competitor, and now you've got your M&P that you're carrying and your M&P that you're competing with. You can run them usually out of the same holster. So the beautiful thing is now when you're training and running and competing with your competitor, that training is going to translate into the M&P that you're carrying every day. That's a great approach. There's nothing wrong with any of that. And the reason I recommend Glock, most likely you've got one. And you don't have to go buy a new gun. You can get started with the Glock that you have, and then you can get one and build it custom for your competition purposes without a massive investment or second mortgage. You can make some changes. And again, the ergonomics, the feel, all of those things about the gun are going to be things that are going to immediately translate to success on the range. While you're competing, there's so much going on, guys. As a new competitive shooter, you're having to think about stage planning. That means I have to know from this box, I engage these targets, and I have to shoot this target twice and this target once. And then I have to move and go engage those targets. And somewhere in this stage, I'm going to have to reload, and I don't want to be in the middle of shooting a bunch of targets when I do that. So I've got to plan that reload and where that's going to happen. I have to make sure if I'm moving, my finger is out and clearly out of the trigger guard on the side of the gun, so the RO knows I'm nowhere near it. My muzzle has to stay 100% pointing forward. If you break that 180, you are immediately disqualified. You have to be thinking about your footwork and whether you've stepped into the box that you can shoot from or not, and you can't trip over the little bar that might be there. You have to be able to lean around and there's so many things that are going on. The last thing you want to be thinking about is learning a brand new style of gun. Striker fired, so simple. You're not having to worry about disengaging a safety. You're not having to worry about decocking or anything like that. This makes the game simple for you when it comes to the firearm so that your brain can handle some of those complex things that are going to be happening that you haven't experienced yet, especially under the pressure of that clock. So again, striker fired, very simple, probably the way to go and where you should jump in if you're thinking about competition shooting. If you already have a striker fired gun, get out there on the range. The only regret you'll have is not doing it sooner. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Let me know what your thoughts are. What do you compete with now, and what are you thinking about getting? Thanks, guys.